Hey guys, tonight we're checking in for an extended stay at a place that was meant to be a pinnacle of science and charity, but was often a house of horrors. We're journeying into the world of the Victorian hospital. Imagine vast, echoing wards lined with dozens of iron beds. The air thick with the smell of carbolic acid and despair, and a level of hygiene that was, to put it mildly, a work in progress. This was a place where you could go in with a simple broken bone and come out with a host of new, exciting, and probably fatal infections. Tonight, we're going to experience what it was really like to be a patient in one of these magnificent and terrifying institutions. And let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive the treatment, let alone the injury that brought you there. Forget the lack of antibiotics. Your surgeon would likely operate in his street clothes, his apron stained with the blood of yesterday's patients as a badge of experience. And his primary tool for preventing infection was a stern belief that germs were a fanciful French superstition. The hospital itself was often the most dangerous disease of all. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a quiet and simple way to support the channel. And while you're at it, I'd love to see where and when you're tuning in from. Go ahead and drop your city and local time in the comments. It's always a little fascinating to see our community of history lovers spread across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your world is a universe of noise, a constant, deafening, and rhythmic roar that you feel not just in your ears, but in your bones, in the very air you breathe. It is the sound of 1,000 power looms, the great iron hearts of the textile mill in Manchester where you work. The year is 1872, and this is the roaring, smoke-choked, and fantastically wealthy heart of the Industrial Revolution. Your life is governed by the factory whistle. It wakes you before dawn in your small, crowded room in a tenement building. It calls you to the factory gates. It signals your brief midday meal of bread and cheese. And it releases you, 12 hours later, into the gaslit darkness, your body aching, your lungs coated with a fine layer of cotton dust. The work is monotonous and dangerous. You are an operator on one of the great looms, a vast, complex machine of spinning wheels, driving belts, and clattering shuttles. The machines are the gods of this new age, and they are hungry gods, demanding a constant tribute of labor and all too often, of flesh and bone. The air in the great weaving shed is hot, humid, and thick with cotton fibers. The noise is so loud that you and your fellow workers communicate through a kind of sign language. A series of nods and gestures. Accidents are a common, accepted part of life. A worker's long hair caught in a spinning shaft, a hand crushed by a driving gear. The factory has an excellent safety record. The owner says, only 3 workers have been seriously injured this month. A new company record. Your own accident happens with a shocking, almost banal, speed. A moment of inattention. Your foot slipping on a greasy patch of floorboards as you reach to clear a jammed shuttle. Your leg slides under the machine, and you are pulled into the grate. Grinding. Indifferent mechanism. There is no single, sharp pain. There is a terrible crunching, tearing sensation, and a sound that is not a human sound. And then the machine. Its rhythm finally broken by the intrusion of your body, grinds to a halt. The sudden silence that follows is more shocking than the noise ever was. The world becomes a blur of shouting faces, of hands pulling you from the machinery. Your foreman, a large man with a kind but helpless face, looks down at your leg. Well, he says, with the grim understatement of a man who has seen this many times before, that's not supposed to bend that way. His first aid consists of giving you a long, burning swig of cheap whiskey from his flask and telling you to be brave. You lie on the dirty, oil-stained factory floor, the pain now a grate, white-hot, roaring fire in your leg, and you wait for the ambulance. the hospital ambulance. When it arrives, is not the smooth, well-equipped vehicle of a future age. It is a simple, boxy wooden cart pulled by a single, tired-looking horse. Its suspension system consists of a wooden box bolted directly to the axles. It is designed not to provide care, but simply to transport a body from the site of an accident to the hospital. Two gruff porters lift you onto a simple stretcher and slide you into the dark. Narrow space inside the cart, the doors are closed, and your journey begins. Every single cobblestone, every rut in the unpaved streets of Manchester is a new and exquisite adventure in agonizing pain. You bite down on a leather strap they have given you to keep from screaming. Through the small, grimy window at the back of the cart, you see the city passing by. You see the great, towering smokestacks of the factories, belching their black, greasy smoke into the perpetually gray sky. You see the rows of identical, soot-stained brick houses. You see the faces of the people, pale and hurried. This is the city that you have given your labor, and now your body, to. It is the great engine of progress and prosperity for the British Empire, and you are one of its broken parts. Future historians will debate the legacy of this great revolution you are living through. Was it a glorious leap forward for humanity? An engine that created unprecedented wealth and technological marvels? Or was it an age of brutal exploitation, of social misery? A machine that was fueled by the broken bodies and the shortened lives of the working class? Lying in the back of this jolting, agonizing cart? You have a fairly clear opinion on the matter, after a journey that feels like an eternity. The ambulance rumbles to a halt. The back doors open. You are pulled out into the courtyard of a vast, imposing, and deeply intimidating building. It is the Manchester Royal Infirmary, a great multi-story edifice of red brick, stained black by a century of industrial soot. It looks less like a place of healing and more like a prison, or a particularly grim factory whose only product is death. You have survived the accident. You have survived the journey. And as the two hospital porters lift your stretcher and carry you towards the great, arched doorway, you have the terrible, sinking feeling that your ordeal is not over. The most dangerous part of it is just about to begin. You are about to be admitted into a Victorian hospital. The great, arched doors of the Manchester Royal Infirmary swing open, and you are carried inside. You have left the noisy, chaotic world of the city street and entered a new world, one with its own distinct sounds, smells, and its own cold. Intimidating authority, the entrance hall is vast, its stone floors echoing with the footsteps of hurried people, its high ceilings lost in shadow. The air itself is different. It is a strange, sharp, and unnervingly clean smell. It is the smell of carbolic acid, of chloride of lime, of rubbing alcohol, all layered over a deeper, more persistent smell of sickness, of laundry, of boiled food. It is the signature perfume of a 19th century hospital. You are not taken to a doctor. You are not taken to a bed. You are taken to a clerk. Your stretcher is placed on the floor of a small, cold administrative office. Next to a line of other unfortunates, a woman with a hacking cough, a small child with a feverish flush. A tired-looking man with ink-stained fingers sits behind a high wooden desk. A massive, leather-bound ledger open before him. He does not look at you. He looks at his book. You are not a person in pain. You are an entry to be made when your turn comes. He asks you a series of questions in a flat, board monotone, your name, your age, your occupation loom operator, your parish, your religion. This last question is important. This is a charitable hospital, funded by the city's wealthy patrons. And the charity it dispenses is often tied to a sense of moral and religious propriety. Patients are expected to be members of the deserving poor, and your answer is duly noted. You have now been officially processed. You have been transformed from a man into a case from the clerk's office. You are taken to a small, cold, tiled room in the hospital's basement. This is the admissions ward, and it is here that the process of stripping you of your identity begins in earnest. Two large, burly hospital porters, their sleeves rolled up, lift you from your stretcher onto a slate table with a pair of large, sharp shears. They begin to cut away your clothes, your heavy work trousers, your flannel shirt, your small clothes. All of it is cut from your body, the cloth stiff with your own dried blood. You are left exposed, shivering, and profoundly humiliated on the cold slate. Your few possessions, the small penknife in your pocket, a few coins. The locket with a picture of your mother are taken from you, catalogued in the same dispassionate manner as your name, and put into a small cloth bag for safekeeping. And then comes the bath. It is not a gentle or a soothing experience. You are lifted into a large, metal tub of lukewarm water that already looks slightly gray from its previous occupants. You are scrubbed from head to toe by one of the porters, with a stiff bristled brush and a block of harsh, yellow lye soap that stings your skin and makes your eyes water. He is rough, efficient, and entirely indifferent to the bolts of agony that shoot through your shattered leg. The purpose of this bath is not your comfort. It is a sanitary ritual. It is to remove the filth and the grime of the city, of the factory, from your body before you are allowed to contaminate the relative cleanliness of the hospital's wards. This is a central and deeply debated aspect of the hospital you have just entered. Was this ritual of stripping, scrubbing, and uniforming a genuine, if crude, attempt at hygiene, a primitive understanding that the dirt of the outside world brought disease with it? Or was it also a powerful, if unconscious, act of institutionalization, a way to break down your individual identity, to strip you of your personhood, and to remake you as a patient, an inmate, a more compliant and manageable part of the great hospital machine? You, lying shivering and in agony in the gray water, suspect it is a bit of both. After you have been scrubbed raw, you are pulled from the tub and dried with a coarse linen towel. You are then given your new clothes, your uniform for the duration of your stay. It is a single, shapeless garment, a long nightshirt made of rough, unbleached cotton that reaches to your knees. It has no buttons, but ties at the back with two simple strings, leaving your entire backside exposed to the cold drafts of the hospital corridors. It is the uniform of the sick, the uniform of the pauper, a garment designed to be both practical and deeply, soul-crushingly, humiliating. It's the hospital's complimentary welcome package of full-body scrub and a profound loss of dignity. You are now officially a patient, cleaned, cataloged, and stripped of your identity. You are placed on a wheeled gurney, a junior doctor, a young man with a confident air and tired eyes. Finally comes to see you. He does not speak to you. He speaks to the medical student standing beside him, discussing your case as if you were a piece of interesting but broken machinery, a compound fracture of the tibia and fibula, he says, prodding your injured leg with a clinical detachment that makes you cry out in pain. Significant tissue damage. Note the angulation. We will have to reduce the fracture and set it in the theater tomorrow. He makes a few more notes in a book, and then he is gone. You are wheeled out of the admissions area, down a long, echoing stone corridor. The sounds of the hospital are all around you now, the distant, muffled clang of a bell, the squeak of unseen wheels, the low murmur of voices, and the constant, underlying sound of coughing, of moaning, of human suffering. The porters push you through a set of tall, imposing double doors, and you get your first look at the world that will be your new home for the next several months. You have entered the great surgical ward. It is a vast, cavernous room, so long you can barely see the other end. The ceiling is high, lost in the gloom, with tall, arched windows that let in a weak, grayish light, and stretching out before you, in two long, perfectly straight, and seemingly endless rows, are the beds. Dozens of them. Identical iron beds, each with a thin straw mattress and a single gray wool blanket. And in almost every bed is a man, a patient, a fellow prisoner in this great, echoing hall of misery. You are wheeled down the central aisle, between the two rows of beds. You see the faces of the other patients turn to watch you. Their expressions a mixture of mild curiosity and apathetic despair. You are the new arrival, the latest addition to their community of the broken. The porters lift you from the gurney and deposit you, with little ceremony, into your assigned bed. Bed number 27. You are no longer the man who worked the loom. You are no longer the man with a name and a family. You are now the compound fracture in bed 27. The porters leave, and you are left alone. Lying on your thin mattress, the rough cotton of your hospital nightshirt scratching against your skin. You look down the long, seemingly endless ward. You see the rows of beds, the still forms of the other patients. You hear the symphony of suffering that is the constant music of this place, and you are filled with a new and profound sense of dread. You have survived your accident. You have survived the agonizing journey to this place. But you realize now, with a chilling certainty, that your true ordeal, your long, miserable, and dangerous battle for survival, has only just begun. The great, echoing hall of the admissions ward is a kind of purgatory, a way station between your old life in the world of the living and your new life in the strange. Parallel universe of the sick. After you have been stripped, scrubbed, and catalogued, you are deemed ready. The two burly hospital porters return. They lift you back onto a wheeled gurney, and they push you through another set of imposing double doors. You are now entering the heart of the hospital. You are entering the great open ward. The room is a cavern. It is so long that the far wall is lost in a hazy, gray gloom. The ceiling is impossibly high, with great, arched windows that line the walls. Their glass grimy with the industrial soot of Manchester. They let in a weak, cheerless light that does little to dispel the shadows. And down the length of this great hall, arranged in two perfectly straight, unending rows, are the beds. There must be 50 of them. 60? Maybe more? They are simple. Black, iron-framed beds, each with a thin straw-stuffed mattress, a single gray wool blanket, and a small wooden locker beside it. And in almost every bed, there's a man. You are wheeled down the central aisle, a silent, slow procession that allows you to take in the full panorama of suffering. The air is thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, of stale food, of sickness, and of the ever-present, sharp, chemical tang of carbolic acid. The sound is a low, constant symphony of misery, the hacking cough of a man with consumption, the low groan of a man in pain, the shallow, ragged breathing of a man with pneumonia, the occasional, delirious shout. The other patients watch you as you are wheeled past. Their faces are pale. Their eyes are dull and listless. They look at you with a kind of mild, apathetic curiosity. You are the new arrival, the latest specimen to be added to their collection of the broken and the miserable. You are brought to your assigned bed, number 27. It is halfway down the long ward, a bed like any other. The porters, with a final, practiced, and not at all gentle movement, shift you from the gurney to the bed. The mattress is lumpy, the straw inside rustling with the sound of 1,000 tiny, unseen things. The porters leave. You are now officially a resident, and you begin to learn the strict and monotonous routine of this new world. Your life is no longer your own. It is governed by the ringing of a single, sharp handbell, rung by the nurse at the beginning and the end of every prescribed activity. Your day begins long before dawn, at 5 o'clock in the morning. When the bell rings for waking, a nurse. A stern-faced young woman in a crisp, dark dress and a starched white apron and cap. Moves down the ward. She is an agent of the new nursing philosophy pioneered by the great Florence Nightingale. She is a creature of discipline, of order, and of a rigid, almost military, efficiency. She comes to your bedside with a bowl of cold water and a small, rough cloth. These are your morning ablutions. You are expected to wash your own face and hands. Then comes breakfast, brought on a rattling metal cart. It is a single, unvarying meal, a bowl of thin, watery, and entirely flavorless oatmeal gruel, and a mug of weak, lukewarm tea, served without milk or sugar. After breakfast comes the first great ritual of the day, the doctor's rounds. The senior surgeon of the ward, a great important man with a magnificent beard and a perpetually stained waistcoat, sweeps into the ward, followed by a flock of a dozen eager young medical students. They move from bed to bed. The surgeon does not speak to the patients. He speaks about them, to his students, as if they were interesting pieces of meat on a slab. He pokes, he prods, he lectures in a loud, booming voice. While you lie there in a state of silent, powerless humiliation, the middle of the day is marked by the main meal. It is another unvarying ritual, a single, small, and stringy piece of boiled mutton. Its fat a pale, greasy film on the surface of the thin broth it is served in. It is accompanied by a single, sad, boiled potato. You are quite sure they use the same piece of mutton every single day, just pulling it out of the pot and serving it to a new patient. The afternoons are a long, slow desert of boredom. You are expected to lie quietly in your bed. There is no conversation. There is no entertainment. The only reading material permitted is the Bible or a selection of pre-approved religious tracts left by the hospital's chaplain. The evening brings another meager meal bread and broth, and then, at 8 o'clock, the gas lights that line the walls of the ward are turned down low. Another bell rings. It is time for sleep. The ward is plunged into a dim, shadowy darkness. But it is not quiet. The night is filled with the sounds of suffering, the constant chorus of coughing and groaning that provides the only lullaby in this house of pain. The absolute ruler of this world is not the great surgeon, who visits for only an hour each day. It is the matron. She is a woman of terrifying authority, a former army nurse who trained under Nightingale herself in the Crimea. She is a formidable figure, gliding silently through the ward in her black silk dress, a great ring of keys jangling at her waist. Her word is law. She rules the ward with an iron fist and a fanatical devotion to two things, discipline and ventilation. She is a zealot of the miasma theory, and her primary weapon against the bad air that she believes causes all infection is the window. The great, tall windows of the ward are kept open, day and night, winter and summer, a constant. Chilling draft blows through the long room. The matron believes that fresh air is the ultimate cure, even if it is 30 degrees and snowing outside. The windows must be open. Her theory is that a patient cannot sicken if they are frozen solid. This is the great debate that will be had about the legacy of the new Nightingale nurse. Is she a great reformer? A woman who has brought cleanliness, order, and discipline to the chaotic, filthy hospitals of the past, or is her rigid, military-style discipline, her fanatical focus on the environment over the individual patient, a new kind of cold, impersonal cruelty? You, shivering under your single thin blanket, are inclined to believe the latter. You get to know your fellow inmates. The man in the bed to your right is a railway worker with a crushed hand. The man to your left is a foundry worker who is slowly, quietly, coughing his lungs out with consumption. You are a community of the broken, the poor, the unlucky. You speak to each other in quiet, whispered conversations when the nurses are not looking. You share stories of your former lives, of the world outside these gray walls, and you wait. You wait for your own turn to be taken from the ward to the one place in the hospital that is even more feared than the admissions room. The operating theater. After 3 days of lying in your bed, your broken leg throbbing with a dull, constant pain, the day finally comes. The senior surgeon, during his morning rounds, stops at your bed. He pokes at your swollen leg. He confers with his students, and he makes his decision. This one will need to be said. He announces to the room at large, "There is a compound fracture. We will need to open the leg to align the bones." Later that day, a nurse comes to your bed. She is carrying not a bowl of gruel, but a small razor. She roughly, dryly, shaves the hair from your injured leg. "The surgeon will see you in the morning," she says, her voice devoid of any emotion. "You will have no breakfast and no water." She leaves. You are left alone with your thoughts. You lie awake all night, listening to the sounds of the ward, but you are no longer just a patient. You are a man who is about to be taken apart and put back together again by men in blood-stained aprons. You are about to become a subject for their terrible, pre-antiseptic art, and you are more frightened than you have ever been in your life. You spend the night before your operation in a state of quiet, sleepless terror. The long, dark ward is filled with the usual symphony of suffering, the coughing, the groaning, the occasional delirious shout, but tonight, it all seems to be a prelude, a dark overture to your own personal performance of pain. You lie on your lumpy straw mattress, your broken leg a hot, throbbing ache, and you think about the surgeon's knife. Morning arrives, not with the sun, but with the clanging of the nurse's bell. You are not given the usual miserable breakfast of thin gruel. You are to have nothing. 2 burly hospital porters arrive at your bedside with a wheeled gurney. It is time. They lift you, with their usual rough indifference, onto the gurney and begin the long, echoing journey from the ward to the operating theater. You are wheeled through the cold, stone corridors of the hospital. You pass other wards, other rooms, catching glimpses of a world you have not yet seen. Finally, you arrive at a set of heavy, imposing wooden doors. This is the entrance to the theater. The porters push the doors open, and you are wheeled inside. The room is unlike any you have ever seen. It is an amphitheater in miniature. In the center of the room, under a large skylight designed to provide the best possible natural light, is the operating table. It is not a bed, it is a sturdy wooden table, its surface stained dark with the accumulated fluids of 1,000 previous operations. It has thick leather straps for restraining the patient's arms and legs. The floor around the table is covered in a thick layer of sawdust, a grimly practical measure to absorb the blood. And rising up around this central stage are tiered, semicircular rows of wooden benches. They are filled with an audience. Dozens of young medical students, dressed in their normal, dark street clothes, are here to watch the show. They are leaning forward, their faces a mixture of academic curiosity and morbid excitement. You realize with a jolt of horror that your private agony is about to become a public lecture. It is reassuring to know that your life-threatening surgery will also be a fun educational event for a group of young men. Then, the great surgeon himself makes his entrance. He is the man you saw in the ward rounds, the one with the magnificent beard. He is a figure of immense authority. He is not dressed in any kind of special surgical garment. He wears his usual fine, black frock coat over this. He puts on his apron for this. The apron is the stuff of nightmares. It is made of a heavy, stiff cloth, and it is not white. It is a dark, brownish red, caked and stiffened with the dried blood, the pus, and the unidentifiable gore of 100 previous surgeries. He wears it as a badge of honor, a testament to his vast experience, in the mind of the great Victorian surgeon. A clean apron is the sign of an inexperienced man. The idea that this filthy garment might be a carrier of death has not yet occurred to anyone. The surgeon greets his audience of students with a confident nod. He then turns his attention to you. Gentlemen, he says, his voice booming in the tiered room. Today we have a fine example of a compound fracture of the tibia. A common, but always instructive. Injury. The porters lift you from the gurney and place you on the cold, hard operating table. They begin to strap down your arms and your good leg. The pain in your broken leg is a white-hot fire. And then, a small mercy. The anesthetist approaches. He is carrying a cloth cone and a bottle of a sweet. Cloying, chemical-smelling liquid. Chloroform. It is one of the great new miracles of your age. He places the cone over your nose and mouth. Breathe deep, my lad, he says, his voice a kind, distant murmur. You inhale the sweet. Sick fumes. Your lungs burn. The room begins to spin. You feel a sense of profound, terrifying disorientation, as if you are falling down a dark well. You struggle for a moment, a panicked, animal instinct to fight back. And then, the world dissolves into a hazy, dreamlike fog. You are not completely unconscious. Not in the way a modern patient would be. You are in a twilight state, aware of what is happening, but as if from a great distance. Your pain is a dull, remote echo, not the sharp, screaming thing it was before. Through this fog, you hear the surgeon's voice, a continuous, booming lecture to his students. As you can see, gentlemen, the bone has pierced the skin. Our first task is to clean the wound of any foreign matter. You hear the clatter of his instruments on a metal tray. These instruments, were not sterilized. They were likely just wiped clean with a rag after their last use. The surgeon might even have a favorite scalpel that he keeps in his pocket. You hear him describing what he is doing. You feel a strange, distant sensation of pulling and probing in your leg. You hear the sickening, grating sound of a metal instrument scraping against your own bone. The surgeon works with a brutal, astonishing speed. In this age, before any real understanding of infection, speed is considered the single greatest surgical virtue. The less time the patient is open to the bad air of the hospital, the less chance there is of the wound putrefying. And so, the great surgeons are not the most careful or the most gentle. They are the fastest. They are masters of a kind of high speed. Artisanal butchery. You hear the surgeon call for a ligature. You feel a sharp, pulling sensation deep inside your leg as he ties off a bleeding vessel with a piece of common silk thread. The same kind a tailor might use to sew a coat. This unsterilized thread will be left inside your leg. A perfect wick for a future infection. The surgery is over in what feels like minutes. The bone has been set. The wound has been stitched shut. The surgeon, with a final, satisfied flourish, announces the success of his work to his applauding students. A simple dressing of linen is applied to your leg, and a wooden splint is tied on to keep it immobile. You are lifted from the table, your body limp. Your mind a confused and nauseous jumble from the anesthetic. You are wheeled back to the great open ward. The operation has been a great success. The surgeon has demonstrated his skill. The students have learned a valuable lesson, and you are alive, and your leg is straight. You are placed back in your bed. Number 27. The pain begins to return as the chloroform wears off. A great, throbbing, all-consuming monster. A nurse gives you a dose of laudanum, the blessed tincture of opium, and the pain recedes once more, replaced by a warm, drifting, and unreal calm. You have survived the factory, you have survived the ambulance, and now you have survived the surgeon's knife. You drift into a drugged sleep, and you believe that your long ordeal is finally over. You have no way of knowing that the true, and by far the most dangerous, part of your journey has only just begun. You have not just been operated on by a surgeon, you have been infected by him. His unwashed hands, his filthy apron, his contaminated instruments, the very air of his operating theater, have all introduced a new and invisible enemy into the open wound in your leg. Now, you must survive the recovery. You must survive the inevitable infection. You must survive the great unseen ghost of the Victorian hospital itself. You lie in your bed, a prisoner of your own fractured bone. The initial drug-induced haze from the chloroform has worn off, replaced by a deep, throbbing, and intensely real pain in your leg. But you are alive. The surgeon, with his terrifying, blood-stained apron and his theatrical, high-speed artistry, has done his work. He has set your bones. You have survived the ordeal of the operating theater. And you, like everyone else in this ward, believe that the worst is now over. This belief is the great, central, and fatal delusion of the Victorian hospital. The surgery is not the primary danger, the true, and far more lethal. Enemy is the recovery, in the days that follow your operation. You begin to observe the grim ecosystem of your new home. You watch the men in the beds around you, and you begin to see a pattern. A man who has had a simple amputation of a crushed finger does not get better. Instead, a red, angry swelling begins to creep up his hand and arm. A man who had a benign tumor removed from his back develops a raging fever and begins to shiver uncontrollably. You see that the men in this ward are not dying from their original injuries. They are dying from something they have contracted here. Within these very walls, you are witnessing the terrifying, and at this time, unstoppable, power of the ghost of the hospital. The surgeons of your time have a name for it. They call it hospitalism. It is a vague and all-encompassing term for the collection of infections that were so common, so rampant, and so deadly in the great surgical wards of your era that they were considered an almost inevitable consequence of surgery itself. The surgeons did not know about the bacteria on their unwashed hands, on their filthy instruments, on their blood-stiffened aprons. They did not understand the science of germs, and so they fell back on the only theory they had: miasma. You overhear your own surgeon discussing it with his students during their morning rounds. Hospitalism. He lectures, gesturing at the long ward filled with sick and dying men, is a pestilential condition of the atmosphere. It is a miasma that arises when too many sick and wounded bodies are crowded together in a single space. It corrupts the air, and this corrupted air then enters the wounds of our patients, causing the flesh to putrefy. The theory is logical, it is scientific sounding, and it is completely wrong. But it is the lens through which you all now view your world. Your first lesson in the practical effects of hospitalism comes from the man in the bed next to you. He is the railway worker with the crushed hand. His surgery, a simple amputation of 2 fingers, was a success. But now, his entire arm is swollen to twice its normal size. The skin a tight, shiny, and angry red, with dark, snaking lines running up towards his shoulder. The surgeon diagnoses it as erysipelas, a disease the common people call St. Anthony's fire. There is no cure. You watch helpless as the man's condition worsens, as he is consumed by the fever. He dies a few days later. He did not die of a crushed hand. He died of a dirty knife. Your own leg is a source of constant, gnawing anxiety. The pain is no longer a clean, sharp pain from the broken bone. It is a hot, persistent, throbbing pain. The wound, where the surgeon made his incision, is red and swollen. A thick, yellowish-white pus begins to weep from between the stitches. You show it to the nurse. She is not alarmed. In fact, she seems pleased. Ah, she says with a nod of professional approval. Laudable pus? A good sign. It shows the body is expelling its corrupt humors. This is another of the great, deadly misunderstandings of your medical age. The surgeons believe that the formation of a thick, creamy pus is a healthy and necessary part of the healing process. They do not know that it is the calling card of a massive staphylococcal infection. They see a sign of health where you, with your modern understanding, would see a 5-alarm fire. But the true terror of the ward, the king of all the diseases of hospitalism, is gangrene. You see it happen to a man across the aisle. A man who had a simple compound fracture. Much like your own, his wound, instead of producing laudable pus, begins to ooze a thin, brownish, and foul-smelling liquid. The flesh around his wound begins to turn a dark, purplish black. It becomes cold to the touch. It is dying. The smell is a thing of nightmares, a sweet, rotten stench that soon fills the entire ward. A smell that you will never, ever forget. The surgeons know that there is only one, desperate, and usually futile. Treatment for hospital gangrene, a reamputation. They must try to cut away the dead flesh. To get ahead of the rot, the man is taken back to the operating theater. They amputate his leg high above the knee. He is brought back to the ward, a maimed and broken man. But the gangrene, the invisible, microscopic enemy that is already in his blood, simply begins its work on the new stump. He dies 2 days later. You lie in your bed, your own leg throbbing, and you are consumed by a new and absolute terror. You are no longer afraid of your injury. You are afraid of your own recovery. You are afraid of the ghost of the hospital. You watch the daily routines of the ward, and you see the ghost at work everywhere. You see the surgeon's assistant, after lancing a boil on one patient, simply wipe the pus from his scalpel onto a rag and then move to the next bed to inspect a fresh surgical wound. You see the nurses in their endless and well-intentioned efforts to keep the patients clean. Use a single, communal sponge to wash the wounds of every man in the ward. The sponge is rinsed in a single bowl of cloudy, pinkish water. It is a perfect, efficient, and entirely unintentional system for transferring the infection from a man with gangrene to a man who is still healthy. It is a delivery system for death. The great academic debate among the physicians of your time is about the cause of this hospitalism. Is it a moral failing of the patients? A morbid constitution inherent in the bodies of the poor and the intemperate? Is it a problem of hospital architecture? A failure of ventilation that allows the miasma to concentrate? Or is it a failure of hygiene? You, watching the nurse with the communal sponge, are beginning to form your own, uneducated and heretical opinion. The hospital has two main outcomes after surgery. You think with a humor as black as a gangrenous wound. You either get better, or you get a fascinating new infection that turns your leg black. It's always a surprise. Your own condition worsens. The infection in your leg is not healing. The pain is constant, a deep, grinding ache that the laudanum no longer touches. The surgeon, during his rounds, examines your wound with a look of growing concern. He and his students gather around your bed. You are no longer a person. You are an interesting case. A puzzle to be solved. They poke and prod at your swollen, inflamed leg. They use their medical terminology, speaking in Latin and Greek, as if to create a scientific shield against the simple, brutal reality of your suffering. And then you hear the word you have been dreading more than any other. You hear the great surgeon mutter it to his chief assistant. Gangrene. The word falls into the quiet of the ward like a stone into a deep well. It is a death sentence. The surgeon looks at you, his professional face a mask that betrays no emotion. He has made his decision. The putrefaction is too advanced. He announces to his students, and to you, the bone itself is likely corrupted, if we are to save the man's life. We must sacrifice the limb. He turns to the matron of the ward. Prepare the theater, he says. We will amputate in the morning. You lie in your bed. The words echoing in your head. We must take the leg. You have survived the factory. You have survived the agonizing journey. You have survived the brutal, bloody art of the surgeon's knife. And it has all been for nothing. You have been a patient in this great, modern, and scientific hospital for 3 weeks. And it has not healed you. It has infected you. You are a victim, not of your accident, but of the very place that was meant to be your cure, you are about to lose your leg, and very likely your life, to the true, invisible, and undefeated master of this house, the ghost of the hospital. The surgeon's verdict: we must take the leg is a death sentence for the man you used to be. You, a man who made his living on his feet, in the clattering, fast-paced world of the factory, are about to become a cripple. The thought is a new and profound kind of horror, a terror that eclipses even the immediate. Searing pain of the gangrene that is consuming your flesh, you spend the night before the amputation in a state of quiet, wide-eyed dread. This is your second journey to the operating theater. But this time, there is no hope of being put back together again. This is a journey of disassembly. It is in this long, dark night of the soul that you come to truly understand the world of your caregivers. The nurses of the great open ward. In the daytime, they are a blur of starched white aprons and efficient, rustling movements. But in the deep, quiet hours of the night, their true nature, and the nature of the system they serve, becomes starkly, brutally clear. The ward is ruled by a philosophy that has been championed by a woman who is, in your time, becoming a living legend. Florence Nightingale. You have heard of her. The lady with the lamp, the angel of mercy from the Crimean War. Her reforms are transforming nursing from a menial, often disreputable, job for poor women into a disciplined, respectable, and scientific profession, and you are a patient in one of her new model wards. The experience is not what the legends would have you believe. The Nightingale nurse is a creature of discipline. Her primary virtues are not compassion or empathy, but order, efficiency, and an almost fanatical devotion to cleanliness and ventilation. Her enemy is not suffering. Her enemy is chaos. And her patient, you have come to realize, is not the man in the bed, but the ward itself. You are in agonizing pain. You are terrified. You call out in the darkness for a nurse. Your voice a weak croak after a long time. A figure appears, a silent, gliding shadow holding a small oil lamp. She is a young probationer, a trainee nurse. Her face in the flickering light is impassive, her eyes tired. You ask for a drink of water. She tells you that water is only dispensed at the designated hours, and that the next distribution is not until 5 in the morning. You plead with her. She looks at you, not with cruelty, but with a kind of weary indifference. The rules are for the good of all the patients, she says. Her voice a quiet, firm monotone. If I make an exception for you, I must make one for everyone. It would disrupt the ward's routine. And she glides away, leaving you alone with your thirst. You learn that the routine is everything. The ward is a machine, and you are just one of its many small, broken parts. Your individual needs, your personal terror, are entirely secondary to the smooth, efficient functioning of the great, humming apparatus of the hospital. The greatest god in the Nightingale pantheon is fresh air. The matron, the formidable ruler of this domain, is a zealot of the miasma theory, the belief that disease is carried in the foul, stagnant air, and her cure is a constant, punishing draft. The great, tall windows of the ward are kept open day and night, even now, in the cold. Damp chill of a Manchester autumn. A relentless wind blows through the long room, carrying the smell of coal smoke and rain. You shiver constantly under your single, thin wool blanket. You have asked for another, but have been told that too many blankets will impede the free circulation of the health-giving air around your body. The hospital's cure for a raging infection, it seems, is the constant and imminent threat of pneumonia. This is the great, complex legacy of the nursing revolution you are living through. Future historians will debate it endlessly. Was the Nightingale nurse a great leap forward, a force that brought sanitation and order to the brutal, filthy hospitals of the past, Or did her rigid military-style discipline, her fanatical focus on the environment and the routine over the individual patient's comfort and emotional needs, create a new, colder, and more impersonal kind of institutional cruelty lying in your bed, shivering and thirsty and terrified? You have a very strong opinion on the matter. The morning arrives. The bell rings. The porters come with their gurney. You are wheeled back to the operating theater, the same room where your leg was saved just a few weeks ago. The scene is the same, the tiered seats filled with curious students, the sawdust on the floor, the great surgeon with his terrible blood-stained apron. But this time, your fear is different. It is not the sharp fear of the knife, it is the dull, heavy, and profound grief of a man who is about to lose a part of himself forever. You are given the chloroform. You breathe in the sweet, sickly fumes, and you welcome the hazy oblivion that follows. You wake up back in your bed in the great open ward. You are groggy, your head thick and heavy, but you are aware of a new and shocking lightness on your right side. You look down, your leg, from the knee down, is gone. In its place is a great, thick, and heavily bandaged stump. The ghost of your leg is still there. You can feel your toes, your ankle, a phantom itch on a foot that no longer exists. The sensation is a strange and constant reminder of your own dismemberment. Your new life as an amputee begins, and with it, your relationship with the nurses changes. You are no longer just another patient with a feverish wound. You are now a man who requires a great deal of difficult and unpleasant care, and you see the true nature of their work up close. They are not angels of mercy. They are young, working-class women, performing a difficult, dangerous, and often disgusting job for very little pay. They are overworked and undersupplied. You watch as they change the dressings on your stump. Their faces impassive as they handle the blood-soaked linen, as they clean the weeping wound. You see the physical and emotional toll the work takes on them. You see a young probationer, after helping to hold down a screaming man during a particularly painful procedure, retreat to a corner of the ward and weep silently, her own shoulders shaking, before the matron orders her sternly back to her duties. They are as much prisoners of this system as you are. Your recovery is a long, slow, and painful process. The ghost of the hospital, the ever-present threat of infection, still haunts your new wound, but you are lucky. The amputation was high enough, and perhaps the carbolic acid the surgeon used as a simple wound dressing, a new and experimental practice, has had some small, beneficial effect. Your stump begins to heal, cleanly. You lie in your bed for weeks, for months. You watch the life of the ward unfold. You see men die, not just from infection, but from sheer, hopeless despair. You see other men, like yourself, slowly, painfully, begin to heal. You are a long-term resident now, a veteran of this quiet, miserable war. You have survived the factory. You have survived the surgery. And you have survived the ghost of the hospital. You have lost your leg, but you have kept your life. And now, you must learn what to do with the thing that is left. The city of Philadelphia slowly recovers from its bout of fever and its crisis of faith. You, having cast your old life into the Delaware River, must now build a new one. You do not return to the world of the barber surgeons, with its bloody aprons and its confident, deadly theories. You have seen behind the curtain of heroic medicine, and you cannot unsee what you have witnessed. You find your place, instead, in the quiet, compassionate world you discovered at Bush Hill. You become a nurse, an orderly, in one of the city's new charitable hospitals. Institutions that are slowly, cautiously, beginning to embrace the gentler, more supportive methods of the French physicians. Your life is no longer one of dramatic, bloody interventions. It is one of changing linens, of spooning broth into the mouths of the weak, of offering a kind word, of cleaning. You have learned that cleanliness, a simple and profound virtue, is the most powerful medicine you have to offer. You grow older. The 18th century gives way to the 19th. The world of your youth, the world of powdered wigs and humoral theory, begins to fade into history. And you watch, from the quiet vantage point of your hospital ward, as a new age of medicine is born, an age that will, after a lifetime of waiting, finally vindicate the terrible, hard-won lessons of your own youth. It begins as a whisper from across the ocean. You read, in the medical journals that you now follow with a quiet, academic passion, of the work being done in the hospitals of Vienna. You read of a young Hungarian doctor named Semmelweis, a man who has proven, with meticulous statistics, that the simple act of washing one's hands in a chlorine solution can virtually eliminate the scourge of childbed fever. You read his story, and you feel a profound sense of kinship. You see in his struggle a mirror of your own. You see his frustration as the established medical world mocks and dismisses his findings. You see another man who has discovered a simple, life-saving truth, only to be crushed by the arrogant pride of his superiors. And you hear, years later, of his tragic, lonely death in an asylum, and you feel a deep and personal grief for a man you have never met. Then, you read of the work of the great French chemist, Louis Pasteur. You read of his brilliant experiments with swan neck flasks, his definitive proof that the processes of decay and putrefaction are not spontaneous, but are caused by invisible, living organisms in the air, what he calls them germs. And with that single word, the entire theoretical foundation of your old life is demolished. The miasmas, the effluvia, the pestilential vapors, they are all swept away, replaced by a new and terrifyingly real enemy. An enemy that can be seen under a microscope, an enemy that can be fought. Finally, you read the work of the Scottish surgeon, Joseph Lister, a man who has taken the germ theory of Pasteur and has applied it, with brilliant, practical logic, to the world you once knew, the world of surgery. You read of his use of carbolic acid, a crude but effective disinfectant, to sterilize his instruments, to clean his wounds, to kill the invisible germs that cause the dreaded hospitalism, the gangrene and the sepsis that you saw kill so many. You read of his stunning success, of the dramatic fall and post-operative mortality in his wards, and you know that the revolution is finally, truly, here. You are an old man now, a senior surgeon in your own right, a man known for his gentle methods and his eccentric obsession with cleanliness. You have spent a lifetime as a quiet dissenter, a man whose medical philosophy was born in the crucible of a terrible epidemic. And now, the world of science has finally caught up to the simple, practical truths you learned as a young man. One day, a young medical student, an apprentice of your own, asks you why you are so insistent on the tedious ritual of scrubbing your hands between every single patient. You look at the young man, at his confident, intelligent face, and you decide to tell him the story. You tell him of a time when the city of Philadelphia was a ghost town, ravaged by a terrible fever. You tell him of a great and famous physician named Dr. Rush, and of a heroic and deadly cure of bleeding and purging. You tell him of the bowl, and the lancet, and the terrible choice you were once forced to make. I learned. You tell him that the most dangerous thing in a sick room is not the disease. It is the doctor. Or rather, it is the doctor's hands, and the theories in his head that prevent him from seeing the simple truth before his eyes. You go to a small wooden chest in the corner of your study. You open it. Inside is a single object, a relic from your past life. The one tool you did not throw into the river. It is your old thumb lancet, its tortoiseshell handle worn smooth, its steel blade still sharp. You have kept it all these years as a reminder of the terrible, seductive power of a wrong idea, a reminder of the thousands of people who died, not from their disease, but from the cure. You hold the lancet in your old, steady hand. You look at its beautiful, deadly point, and you think of the long, slow, and often bloody journey of your own profession. The journey from the confident ignorance of the lancet to the humble, life-giving wisdom of a simple bar of soap. You have lived to see the world change. You have seen the age of heroic medicine die, and you have seen the age of scientific medicine be born. You have seen the ghosts of the past be given names: Aedes aegypti, Vibrio cholerae, Clostridium perfringens. You have seen the mysteries that once terrified you become problems that can be solved. You put the last lancet you ever owned back in its box. Your long, miserable, and transformative education is complete. You have survived, and you have learned, and that, is a kind of victory. The old doctor closes the wooden box, and with it, he closes the final chapter of his long and eventful life. The memory of the fever-stricken city, of the bleeding bowls, of the hard-won lessons of his youth, all fades now into the quiet, peaceful twilight of his study. His story is told. His journey is complete. Let the image of him, an old man who learned the profound difference between a cure and a harm, now find its own well-earned rest. Your own journey is also now at an end. Leave the gaslit streets of 18th century Philadelphia behind. Leave the world of heroic theories and terrible certainties. Return now to the calm, familiar comfort of your own room, in your own time, a world that has benefited from the quiet, often painful, progress of the men and women who came before. Feel the quiet of your own space settle over you like a soft, warm blanket. The only rhythm is the gentle, steady rhythm of your own breathing, a quiet and reassuring sound in the stillness of your room. The stories of the past, with their pains and their struggles, can be put away now. All that is left is this moment, this quiet, this profound and easy peace. The darkness behind your eyes is a safe and welcoming harbor. It is a place of rest, of healing, of stillness. Allow yourself to sink into its gentle embrace. Let go of the day, let go of the story, and drift peacefully and serenely into a deep and dreamless sleep